Batman is my favorite superhero of all time, so you can imagine my excitement when it was announced that they were developing a new Batman in a universe where he interacts with the Justice League and actually fights Superman.
Tell me, do you bleed?
After the Dark Knight trilogy ended, I needed a new Batman fix, and well, it all sounded so perfect. All my favorite heroes in one movie, but they were not the characters that I know and love, especially Batman. The DC Extended Universe, or the DCEU, rushed their universe building so that they could compete with Marvel's Cinematic Universe. Marvel took their time, and it took them 4 years to develop all of their characters enough to have them all appear in one movie. Each character had their own film and their own storyline that included their strengths, flaws, inner demons, companions, and so much more. They were so developed because Marvel took their time in creating their universe, while the DCEU rushed their films and had the heroes come together far too early. This made the crossover seem like it was out of nowhere, and led to a film that was bland and forgetful. So now let's focus on Batman. The DCEU borrowed heavily from The Dark Knight Returns, a graphic novel by Frank Miller, which is actually one of my favorite Batman stories. In the novel, he's an older, more beaten down Batman, who's relatively alone. There's no more of the Robins or the Batgirls, just him and Alfred. Then during the story, he's forced to have some teamwork, something that he's not used to because it's been so long since he had other people in his life fighting side by side with him. In The Dark Knight Returns, he's forced to work with the new Robin, Carrie Kelly. And obviously the DCEU adapts this by having him come together and work side by side with the Justice League. Even Batman's costume was taken right off the pages of the graphic novel. He had short ears, the gray suit, and the wide black bat symbol. But the biggest thing that they took from the graphic novel was the fight between Superman and Batman, which they based an entire movie on. It was only around 9 pages in the comic, so obviously that's not enough to base a movie on, which is exactly the reason why the actual fight in the film only lasted about 10 minutes. If you're gonna name the film after a fight, you need to at least have the fight be more than 10 minutes in a 3-hour long movie. And it wouldn't even have to be them fighting. They could have spent more time focusing on Batman's detective skills, because he is the world's greatest detective.
Well done, detective. You are worthy of your reputation.
And sure, in Batman v Superman, he went out and did some sly stuff, hacked a computer, but that's not even close to using Bruce's full potential as a detective. Let's compare Batman v Superman to the DC animated universe, specifically in the special World's Finest. The people who made this made possibly the best representation of an on-screen Batman, with Batman the Animated Series. This character from World's Finest is straight from that show, and he's making an appearance on Superman the Animated Series. In World's Finest, when Batman is first confronted by Superman, he throws him across the room, intimidates him, and holds his own with no gadgets and no weapons, just his bare hands. Then while Superman is telling him to leave, Batman slips a tracker on him, and he then tracks Clark to his home and discovered his true identity. That is true detective work, not hacking a computer and letting it download while you're at a party. In World's Finest, he actually goes out and is a true detective, while in Batman v Superman, he just goes through files he downloaded. The DCEU made Bruce a lazy detective rather than the world's greatest. And while we're on the topic of World's Finest, as I said, he took Superman down with no gadgets and no weapons. In the DCEU, Batman is reliant on his weapons and gadgets. He's nothing without them. He gets his ass handed to him in Justice League during the fight underneath the water reserve, and he has to call the Nightcrawler to save himself.
Alfred, I need the Nightcrawler.
And the same goes for the Flying Fox and the Batmobile. Batman's gadgets are part of his heroism, but they don't define him, and they certainly aren't his greatest asset. His greatest asset is his years of training and anything that could help him in his vigilante lifestyle.
Congratulations! You've beaten your old time by 6 seconds.
And also, of course, his peak human conditioning, which allows him to stand toe-to-toe with some of the most powerful beings in the universe.
You're not just some guy in a bat costume, are you? Are you freaking kidding me?
Another huge portrayal of this character is the fact that Batman actually kills people in this universe. It's true that he killed criminals in the early comics, but over time, one of the most important aspects of his moral code and crime-fighting lifestyle is that he never takes a life if it can be avoided. Bruce didn't even kill the Joker after he beat his protege Jason Todd mercilessly and let him blow up and die an extremely painful death.
Why on God's earth is he still alive?
Batman is not known to be a funny character. He's known to be a brooding vigilante whose main goal is to scare criminals he's after.
My bets lost the way.
That's frightened me. This time my enemies shared my dread.
In Batman v Superman, they stay true to this. He is intimidating and he does scare the crap out of criminals. And while they did that right, they did everything else wrong. They give Bruce's traits to the other characters as well. I feel like they were trying to match the success of the Dark Knight trilogy with the dark and grittiness. And while that works perfectly for the Dark Knight trilogy because the movie was mainly focused on Batman and the villain, but it doesn't work here. By giving those traits to everyone else, you're making Batman completely unoriginal because he's just like the rest of the team. Superman is supposed to be a symbol of hope and the opposite of Batman. He does everything by the rule book, and Batman is known for going rogue and doing things that you're not supposed to do.
Foe wouldn't kill me.
I'm counting on it. But in the DCEU, they have Superman do the same thing that Batman does. He's doing things that he shouldn't be doing and that he knows are wrong. Batman should be brooding and serious, but surrounded by uplifting people like Superman, Hal Jordan's Green Lantern, or even the Flash. This is what they tried to do in Justice League, but once again, they overdid it. This time they nailed it with the other characters, making them very funny and lighthearted.
Do you really think that...
Oh, wow, they really just vanish. Huh? Oh. That's rude.
But they also made Batman comic relief like the others, once again making him just like everyone else. They should have kept the Batman from Batman v Superman and mixed them with the uplifting and funny heroes in Justice League. It's extremely awkward to see the character that we love making jokes.
What are your superpowers again?
I'm rich.
And not only that, but jokes that no one can hear. It's just for the audience, and that's not true to the character one bit. There are many different versions of Batman in the comics because times change. It's been almost 80 years since the Caped Crusader made his debut in 1940. The biggest problem that the DCEU Batman has is the fact that the version of the Batman that they chose to use from The Dark Knight Returns isn't supposed to be mixed with the other heroes. He is a beaten down, sad, and lonely man who is a lot older than most versions of Batman that interact with the Justice League. The Dark Knight Returns Batman has no interest in working with others. He reluctantly let one other person help him, but there's no way that he would allow himself to work with an entire team of superheroes, much less go out and look for them to recruit them.
I'm putting together a team. People with special abilities.
No, if they're going down that route, a much younger Batman who hasn't seen as much pain is required. Once again, let's look at the DC animated universe with their Justice League show. It's a much younger Batman who still has faith in humanity. He still had Robin, Batgirl, and Nightwing, so clearly he's willing to work with others, making it much more likely that he'd go out searching for a team. One scene in particular stands out to me when he was sent to kill a little girl named Ace, who was causing hysteria with her mind powers. Bruce, however, had no intention of killing her.
I read your mind. That's how I knew you weren't going to use Mrs. Waller's weapon on me.
No, I wasn't.
He instead stayed with her until she passed away.
He sat with her until her time came.
You would not see the Dark Knight Returns or DCEU Batman do this, because that's not how they were written or the intention of that specific Batman when they were developed. But that's the Batman that they needed in this universe. Someone who was young and willing to be part of a team. The DCEU took this old Batman and tried to throw things in that a younger Bruce would do. An example of this is when he hugged that little girl after her mom died. It doesn't match up with the version of the Batman that they are basing their character on. He goes from hugging a little girl to slaughtering and shooting people. It just doesn't make sense. I feel like you have to choose one or the other. Either an older and more beat down Bruce, who shows no mercy to anyone, or a younger Batman that has good morals and works well with a team, and is more kind-hearted, doing things like what he did for Ace. The reason why that scene with Ace worked with that Batman is because his morals are good. He doesn't go out killing people. He takes criminals down and makes sure that he never takes a life, even of the lowlifes that he's after. There's been a lot of talk that Ben Affleck is tired of playing Batman already, and honestly I would be too after getting criticized over and over again in a universe that is extremely unsuccessful. Justice League bombed at the box office and was not even close to their predictions of how much money they would make for it. I sure as hell didn't see this film in theaters, and honestly I would have been disappointed if I had wasted $12 on it. And the crazy thing is that the DCEU was trying to do something that was actually already being done rather well. The Arrowverse is thriving and is a great DC team-up universe. The crossovers are very well executed, and the individual shows build their own characters' backstory, so that when all of them come together, it's more exciting. Sound familiar? If you ask me, the best thing that they can do at this point is to focus more on the Arrowverse and their animated films, both of which they are executing extremely well, and they should just leave the films alone for now. Then when the time is right, rebuild, but this time take their time and be faithful to the source material. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you liked this video. You can follow me on social media, links are in the description, and make sure you hit that subscribe button for more great content.